On Monday, we talked about the kind of the documents that you would want in general for job searches, things like resumes and LinkedIn, especially. On Wednesday, we talked about the code that you'll want to go ahead and show off to potential employers, because again, as someone who's changing careers, as someone who doesn't have a lot of tech experience already, that's the main experience that you're going to be able to show off to be able to prove your skills is your portfolio and your projects. And then we started talking about the jobs themselves, and we didn't quite get to networking. That's where we're going to pick off today, pick up where we left off from Wednesday. We're going to finish talking about some of the different jobs out there that you are qualified for. We are going to talk about networking and how to go about that, and how to get that started, how to do informational interviews and everything. And then we'll largely talk about where to go from here. We will talk about the last couple of assignments for Tech Career 101. We'll talk about what the next steps are, both for yourself as you actually start to look at jobs, and the next steps for what we can do for you here at Code Guild with Career Services after you've finished all your Tech Career 101 stuff. So let's go ahead and get started. All right, so on Wednesday, we talked about front end, we talked about back end, we talked about full stack. Those are probably the main three job positions that you didn't need me to tell you about. I'm sure all of you knew that they existed already. We talked a little bit about kind of what you could focus your portfolio time on to get a little better, to keep your skills sharp in each of those. Let's go on and talk about some different job titles that are out there that aren't necessarily the first thing that'll come to your head, but are absolutely things that you can apply to. As always, everything that we go over is so individual. Only you, of course, know your particular background and your particular interests. Some of these things that we're going to go over here are going to appeal or be a better fit, or not appeal or not be as good of a fit for different people. So, of course, just keep that in mind that we're as we've been doing, we're talking a lot in generalities because just everybody's interests, everybody's personal experience is going to be different. So after the big stuff, the full stack, back end, front end, kind of web development, the next thing is software engineering. Or systems engineering. If you loved programming, but you didn't really care about the web stuff, if you, well, none of you were in my class, but if you were in my class, you would have definitely heard me talk about it's just all HTTP. Literally, that's your job as a web developer, is just building or responding to HTTP requests. If you loved the programming part, if you enjoyed everything you did, but all that stuff about like HTTP and APIs and all that stuff wasn't something that you were super interested in, then something like software engineering could be for you. Software engineering is basically just any kind of programming that's not for the web. This could be for systems level things, back-end things. This could be for networking or technical or business or database type work. It totally depends. There are a lot of different things you can work with, because the internet is not the only thing that needs coding. So that's always an option. If maybe your favorite part was some of the stuff we did in the first month or so of the boot camp, where you were working with Python and you were kind of solving problems and working with different libraries and doing things, but you weren't real enthusiastic about kind of the whole internet thing, then software engineering might be a good fit for you. If you enjoyed not necessarily coding, but thinking about code more than actually doing the code, something like a systems analyst might also be a good thing. So system analysts are all about efficiency. It's about making code the fastest, the best it can be. If you enjoy coding, talking, and thinking about tech and math, but not necessarily doing all the implementation and all the attention to detail and everything yourself, then systems analyst might be something that you might be interested in. This involves a lot of basically thinking about the best way to code. If you enjoyed the stuff where, a good example is your capstone presentation, or not presentation, your capstone proposal. If you enjoyed thinking about being, okay, what's the best way to accomplish these problems? What's the libraries? What are the tools? What are the languages? What are the best ways to build this? If you enjoy that more than getting in the weeds and actually implementing features, then something like that might be for you. To be a system analyst, it will help the more you know about basically anything in IT, knowing about programming languages, operating systems, servers. This is another kind of jack of all trades sort of thing. The more you know about just anything, the better you'll be at that sort of thing. Another job position that people don't necessarily think of, but can be a very rewarding thing to do, is quality assurance. So quality assurance is not, that means you're not necessarily programming all the time, though you will be doing some programming, and not necessarily being a software tester all the time, though that is something that is usually part of the job. You are overseeing the entire kind of design and testing process, making sure that things like testing and just integration and everything are being used correctly at all the different stages of everything. So it is something that requires a knowledge of coding and the software development lifecycle. But your goal is not necessarily to implement things, but to make sure that other people are implementing things in a way that is, well, that's quality. If you were the kind of person who maybe were slow to implement something on your capstone because first you went back and looked at all the pieces that were existing and wanted to make sure that you weren't just willy-nilly writing code, but making sure that the code you were writing was fitting in and playing nice with all your other code and just kind of testing and making sure that everything works well as you go, then that might be something that you might enjoy. So a couple more here. One is technical writing. If you have great writing and communication skills, but you don't necessarily want to be coding every day in your workplace, then technical writing might be a thing to look into. Again, this is something that depends on your unique skills and experiences. If you don't have a lot of writing experience or documentation experience, or you just don't necessarily think that your creative communication skills might be up to the level that somebody's going to be looking for here, then this may not be the position for you. But this is a great position if you've enjoyed documentation. That's honestly what a lot of technical writing is that somebody's got to write the documentation for things. Somebody's got to know how it works and write down a guide that explains how all that goes. Similarly, you can be a teacher or a trainer. Similar things, you need top-notch writing and communication skills. You'll spend a lot of your time working on things, training on things, building curriculum, actually teaching people. And of course, you'll need to keep up with the latest trends in the world of development. A couple more that we have actually had people from PDX Code Guild go into, more than I would expect necessarily. The first one is technical support engineer. This is a little bit of a special one. This is not being like a technical support or like a help desk sort of thing, if any of you have done that before. This is a very, very different job. And it's a job that you'll only basically find at some companies. If you think of a company like Apple or Google or something like that, if you think about the kind of the users that they have, the users that they have are consumers who may or may not know how all this computing stuff works, who are going to like call in because they can't figure out how to turn their computer on or something like that. If you think about, there are a lot of tech companies that are much less well known because they're what are called B2B or business to business companies. Basically, they sell software and tools and services that are used by other programmers. A good example of this in the Portland area is one of Portland's biggest tech employers, New Relic. New Relic is a company that makes software and systems for monitoring servers, for monitoring your traffic, for monitoring your servers, for monitoring your web app, and making sure that everything is working as expected all the time. So that's something where you're not going to sell that to just your average Joe on the street, right? That's something that's being sold to other web developers. And so if the people that are maybe having problems with your software or have questions are other web developers trying to integrate those tools into their Django app, or their Flask app, or their Express app, or their Ruby on Rails app, it's going to need somebody who knows all that sorts of stuff, all that sort of stuff. And that's where you would come in as a technical support engineer. Basically, you would get tickets that come in from the company's online support portal, and then when someone asked a question, you would go ahead and figure it out and give them an answer. So if you have enjoyed debugging, if you do have those good communication skills where you can go find an error and then communicate to somebody why that error happened, think about the sort of thing that your TAs did with you in the boot camp. That might be something that might be rewarding. Unlike most kind of tech support roles where it's not a particularly great or high-paying job, technical support engineers do usually make pretty much on par with a entry-level web developer. And those tech support engineers are often promoted internally to developers at those companies. Obviously, it's no guarantee, but it can be a great way to get your foot in the door and get some time with a tech company. Another one that it always surprises me how many of our grads, definitely isn't the majority or anything, but we always get a good few grads going into data. There are a number of roles working with data that you can use for which you could use your Python knowledge. Python is the language of data largely. It used to be R. There's kind of Python and R, but it's definitely moving in the Python direction, especially anything involving the internet. Because in Python, you can do the data analysis and then build an API or build a website to share your findings with your data. So these are usually two different roles. Data engineers write the code to clean, organize, move, transform, etc. data, so it's in the right place and the right format for the data scientists. Data analysts are the ones doing the analysis. They are using things like pandas. Data engineers are working more with cloud computing things, automation, databases. Again, cleaning data, getting everything in the right place. This is another one where data engineering generally only requires programming experience, whereas when you get into data analysis or data science, often it does require additional math and statistics knowledge or prior experience or degrees, but not always. I've definitely seen people get hired for data analysis type jobs with no prior knowledge in math or statistics. And the last one I want to talk about is DevOps. DevOps is, like the name suggests, where development meets operations. DevOps are the people responsible for designing and implementing all the different workflows and the tooling that the developers use. If you think about a lot of stuff that you've done in the boot camp, right, where your instructor told you, okay, this is how we're going to use Git, this is how you're going to get the repo, this is where you're going to post everything, this is how you're going to test everything, those sorts of things. That is what DevOps does. They're not necessarily doing the coding, but they are designing and implementing the workflows, setting up all kinds of automation things, setting up testing, making sure that the programmers at the company know how they should be using Git, what kind of Git branches and Git workflow they should be using, all that sort of stuff. And then, of course, often also setting up servers, getting things ready, stuff like that. If you have a background in IT or just an interest in working with servers and computers in general, and want to combine that with programming, this can be a great and a very, very well-paying career choice. DevOps engineers need knowledge of both OS and server-side stuff, and they also need knowledge of the development tools, programming languages, et cetera, that the developers are using. A strong DevOps engineer is great at debugging and troubleshooting. If that sounds fun to you, there are a couple of things that you can do to increase your chances. One of which is obviously going to be experimenting with all those things, working with Git, working with practicing building up servers, doing deployment, things like that, as well as often a lot of the DevOps stuff, because DevOps, again, is kind of where software development meets IT. You do kind of get like in IT where there are a lot of different certifications and credentials from different companies that you can get to kind of further bolster. Maybe you want to get certified in AWS or Microsoft Azure or something like that. And the last one is freelancing. Freelancing can be a great way to gain experience and also learn new skills by taking on different projects. And of course, there's the added benefits of being your own boss. That said, there's also a lot of disadvantages to freelancing. If you are still kind of entry level and you go into freelancing, it's all up to you. It's all up to you. There's no one at the company you can go to for help. There's no one to bail you out. It's all on you. Not only is the development all on you, but setting your schedule, taking on clients, determining your prices, doing accounting, doing your taxes, figuring out how much you need to charge. All those sorts of things are up to you as well. One thing I would say is if you are thinking about freelancing, that's not a bad thing, but I would say that make sure if you don't already have some sort of network that you can leverage to find and get clients for freelancing, if you're going to be just starting literally at the bottom and building up a client base while you're learning everything, just be aware that that it will take you a long time to build up a steady stream of both clients and money. So if you're looking for something that's going to start paying you from day one, freelancing is not it. Freelancing it can be really great, but just keep in mind the caveats. You're spending a lot of your time not doing programming, but all the other kind of business things. You are out on your own, and you don't have a lot of help or support, because obviously it's just you with the company. And unless you already have some sort of network or something already in place, or you already know potential clients, or something you can leverage, it can be a long time before you start making any real money. All righty. Does anybody have any questions about any of those job titles? All right, let's move right along then, and talk a little bit about networking. Statistically, if you send a resume to a company without having any connections at a company, you have about a 2% chance of getting that job. These are rough statistics. I don't remember where they come from. The exact numbers and the exact percentages aren't important. It's just the fact that you have a much higher chance of getting through to the interview rounds and getting to the point where you're actually talking to people and convincing them and everything, if you have a connection with somebody at that company. That doesn't mean they have to be your best friend or even like a former coworker or anything like that. It is totally possible to make connections just through things like LinkedIn. So let's talk a little bit about ways that you can network. Networking is, again, this is why we talked, literally the first thing we started with on Monday was LinkedIn, because networking is usually the slowest. It takes the longest to get up and running. And for not everybody, but for an awful lot of people, it's their least favorite part of the job hunt. So please don't put it off. Get it started as soon as you can, as soon as you've got everything ready to go. So here are a couple of kind of general tips, and then we'll go over just a bunch of opportunities to build your network and some suggestions. So number one is LinkedIn. We will talk about LinkedIn in more depth here in a bit, but two things I can definitely suggest is check that people you may know section for people that you may know, and add things that people that you know. Also, as you're going through, as you are adding people on LinkedIn, as you're contacting or talking to people on LinkedIn, remember that LinkedIn has connections. It's not Facebook. It doesn't have friends. It has connections. People don't have to be your friend. They don't have to be people you've talked to a number of times or anything like that to be your LinkedIn connection. They're just that, they're connections. It's pretty low stakes. I'll tell you right now that I have way more people, way more connections on LinkedIn than I do on any other social network, because again, they're just connections. They're not friends. If you're even on the fence, don't worry about, oh, is someone going to be offended that I'm trying to connect with them? They're not. Just go ahead and do it. Remember that LinkedIn doesn't have friends, it has connections. We'll talk more about this in a bit when we talk about informational interviews, but the search function on LinkedIn is an absolutely great way to find people to reach out for informational interviews. As with most networking things, the more connections you have, the easier it is to find people to talk to. So that is why I always suggest checking the people you may know, adding everyone you can, thinking of everyone you know from boot camp, in your own life, friends and family, things like that that you can leverage, because networking really is like a snowball rolling downhill. It starts off slow, but the more momentum you get, the bigger and easier it gets over time. I promise that it's not something that you just have to keep dredging through. The more you network, not only will you get used to it, but it'll also get much easier as you start to know people, and as you start to be in the same spaces, come up in the same searches, and come up in the same searches as people over time, just as a fact of being there. Eventually you will start to make connections with people you didn't even make the first time around, just from being there and being in there and having mutual connections with people and everything like that. Networking is something that gets so much easier. I can tell you that from experience. It gets so much easier the more you do it. Meetups and hackathons are really great ways to make connections, especially with local connections. They can be hard to find post-pandemic, and they can also be, again, it totally depends on where you are, what city you're in. Portland, for instance, had a really strong meetup and hackathon culture before the pandemic that has been very slow to come back. Other places, it's been much, I just know very anecdotally, other places it's been much quicker to come back after COVID. Some places, the tech scene does have a lot of meetups and is very in person. Some cities, some regions don't really have that as much. Again, it totally depends on what's around you. But meetups and hackathons are great ways to make connections. Not only do they let you get out there and meet people in person instead of just trying to talk to people online, but the more you go to a meetup over and over again, or just if you go to a hackathon, they're both chances to just be in the room with the same people over and over again, which can make it easier to not only make connections with people, but to make deeper connections with people, just because you're in there, you're talking with people. Hackathons are particularly good at this. Hackathons are usually where there's a group of people and you are, they usually span either a day or a weekend, or sometimes they'll span a month or a couple of months, but it'll only be maybe like one day a week or something like that. But the idea is that you are spending, a decent amount of time, upwards of 10 hours, basically, working on a project. Usually just putting together an MVP, like kind of a preview or a minimum viable product of something based on some kind of challenge or prompt. And then again, you're spending, not months and months usually, but a decent chunk of time putting something together. This is absolutely fantastic for two reasons. Number one, you'll learn a lot. There are very few things that are better ways to learn things than getting some kind of prompt that's going to challenge you to put things together and make everything work. You will learn a lot just by doing those projects on hackathons, and it's a great way to come up with things to put on your portfolio. Another advantage is that you get to practice working with other people. And especially as someone who's probably going to be doing a lot of their coding on their own until you get hired, it is invaluable, the amount of practice working with things like coding with other people, dividing up different things, working with things like linters to make sure everybody's styling their code the same way, test suites, Git branches to make sure there aren't merge conflicts, all those sorts of things that it's hard to practice on your own. Going to a hackathon is going to be an awesome way to go ahead and practice that. So That's reason one to do a hackathon, is that it's really, really great for building up your skills quickly. And reason two is, of course, networking. You're probably working on a team of, it totally depends on the hackathon, but your average is probably about 5 or 6 people. And usually in a hackathon, usually it is purposely set up so that you get a range of ability. Usually when people are doing hackathons, they try to put, some beginners, some intermediate, and some advanced in each team. So you will be on, it won't just be you and a bunch of other entry-level programmers trying to figure out what you're doing. You will be able to learn from and to network with more advanced people. And ultimately, it's hard not to make a connection, again, when you're spending 10 hours or something working with somebody. You have a connection that has worked with you, that has seen your code and can vouch for you. So hackathons can be an absolutely fantastic way to network, make connections, and work on your own skills. I cannot recommend hackathons enough. You can also often find Slack and Discord groups that are oriented around different cities and different technologies or programming languages. Sometimes these will be associated with a meetup. Sometimes these will just be a chat group that's on the internet, but those are also ways to reach out, to talk to people and find different people to talk to. And then we'll talk about informational interviews here in a little here as our next thing. But when you are looking for informational interviews, keep in mind they don't have to be with people you personally know. You can totally use new LinkedIn connections that you've just met. That's perfectly fine. People are remarkably willing to go ahead and talk to you. Everybody likes to be an expert and kind of talk and share their opinions a bit. And once you've done that, then ultimately you want to be able to have those connections so that you can identify people at the companies you'd like to work for, and meet with them, chat with them, pick their brains, find out more about the companies you're interested in working with. And in the end, you want to be able to have contacts so that when you do go to apply for that job, you do have someone that you can reach out to on LinkedIn or email or however you know them, and be like, hey, I saw this got posted. Do you think I'd be a good fit for this? And if so, can you put in a referral for me? That's the goal. Is you want to get those referrals. If you're not just an anonymous stack or an anonymous resume in a stack of paper, that's where your chances really become much, much better. If you have those connections, those internal referrals, even if it just comes from like random employees or something like that, that greatly, it makes it actually more likely than not that you'll get an interview. Once you get those interviews, once you get the phone screening and you get the in-depth interview, then of course it's up to you to, explain what you're doing and talk about how things are going and everything. And then you can actually show off your skills and your code and everything else. But the hard part is, of course, getting to that point where you are interviewing and talking to people. There are other ways to build your network. Again, network with anyone that you've just anyone that you can, anyone that you've come in contact with, both inside and outside of Code Guild. Reach out to non-techie groups that you might be part of. Chances are, especially if you are in a decent sized city, depending on the activity, chances are that if they're not if that group doesn't have any web developers, it has people who do know them. We'll talk more about informational interviews. LinkedIn, again, I talked about meetups, and I'll give you a little bit later, I'll give you some websites for looking for meetups. You'll find different kind of industry groups. Here we have TAO, or the Technology Association of Oregon. If you're in a different city, obviously it'll be a different group, but most cities with any tech presence have some sort of, oftentimes more than one, sort of trade or local association that might put on different events or mixers or conferences or other things. And also volunteering. If you hear about a conference or a expo that related to web development or technology that might be in town, volunteer for it. That's a great way to get in there, get around, and meet people. You can do it all over LinkedIn. And that is a great way to increase your network, and especially target exactly who you might want to talk to and who you might be interested in. But you also, of course, can get a lot of leverage and really increase your network by getting out of the house and meeting up with people in the real world. Does anybody have any questions so far? All right, then let's go ahead and there are three things I want to talk about now. One, while we're still talking about networking. One of those is how to use LinkedIn. One of those is how to find meetups, and one of them is how to go about doing informational interviews. So the first thing that I want to talk about is how to find different meetups and hackathons and everything. There are lots of different places you can find it. Again, if you find things like that are industry groups, like in Oregon, we have the Technology Association of Oregon. Those can be really great ways to find things out. There is a website called Meetup that is just around the country that applies to everybody, but this is where a lot of tech meetups and things happen and are listed. You'll also often find different sorts of websites for different sorts of, oops, one second. Oh, excuse me. You'll often also find different calendars that are city specific. Obviously, if you are not in the Portland area, I can't really help you and tell you exactly what they are. You'll have to do some Googling. You'll have to Google something like, Miami tech event calendar, or Raleigh tech event calendar, or Chicago tech event calendar, or something like that. But I do know that we have one here in Portland called Calligator. And this is just a calendar of things, meetups, special events, things that are happening here in town. So you can see there's some symposiums, some meetups, some user groups, stuff like that. Again, this used to have a lot more things on it before COVID, but there's still a lot going on. Things are definitely starting to come back. So again, things like Meetup and Calligators, how you can go ahead and find those in-person things. So next thing I want to talk about is LinkedIn again. We've talked about LinkedIn in terms of how to set up your profile, but let's talk about LinkedIn in terms of how to leverage it and how to find new people. One of the best things that LinkedIn has is the search function. And when you search for people or when you're looking at people on LinkedIn, unlike other social media networks, it will tell people and you whether you are first, second, third, or beyond connections. Basically, what that means is a first connection is what you would normally think of as a connection or a friend or a follower on LinkedIn. Second connection means that you aren't connected with each other, but there's basically 1 degree of separation. You have people in common. Third means that there's 2 degrees of people. You have a little less in common, and then obviously up from there. So LinkedIn makes it very easy to find people and see kind of who knows people you may know, things like that. So lots of different things that you can search for. So maybe if I want to find maybe I'm interested in DevOps, but I'm not sure if that's really for me. I could search for DevOps engineer, and I could go to all people results. And well, let's see. Here are a bunch of people that are DevOps engineers. And as you can see, none of them are first connections. So I must not know anybody firsthand who's a DevOps engineer, which sounds a little weird. In real life, I definitely do know people that are DevOps engineers. But we're going to go off what a LinkedIn says here. So I'm looking at that, and I can see maybe I want to go to locations. And I want to say that they're in the Portland, Oregon metro area to just get local DevOps engineers. And again, here's the list. All of these people that say second connections are people that I have connections with in common at that who are DevOps engineers. So I might go through and maybe just start with this Kyle guy, maybe connect with him or ask to connect with him and be like, hey, I just graduated from a boot camp. I really like, I have some IT experience. I really, like the idea of being able to combine IT with coding. Can I buy you a cup of coffee to sit down and talk and see whether DevOps might be something I'm interested in. In fact, I might take that. I would probably, if I was in your shoes, I would probably take that same message and send it to probably at least 5 people or so. Pick out some good ones and see who replies back. It's totally valid and useful to talk to multiple people. Because the more informational interviews you have, not only will you build up more and more connections and talk to and get acquainted with more and more people, but you'll get more information. You'll hear more perspectives from more people working in slightly different roles at slightly different companies, and you'll get more of an idea of what's out there. That's one of the great things about informational interviews, isn't just the networking part, but the information part. You'll get to learn more about companies, roles, languages, skills, what people would recommend doing, what people would not recommend doing. You'll find out a lot, and you'll find out a lot of diverse perspectives just from talking to people and doing informational interviews. That way you don't have to just trust me here telling you all this stuff. You can actually talk to people and get different perspectives, see what different people have to say. Another thing you might want to search for on LinkedIn is maybe I want to search for a company. Maybe I am just absolutely sure that I want to work at Apple. I might go to Apple and see, well, do I have any connections that work there? I do have a couple of connections that work there. So I might message one of these. Or if they were just second connections, if I didn't know anybody at Apple, maybe I can go to the page here for Apple Let's go to people that work at Apple. Let's go to show more. Let's put in Portland, Oregon, I think. So I think there are more filters. Oh, okay, yeah, let's do Oregon, and then we can get rid of this. So let's look at people who work at Apple in Oregon. So here are people that do work for Apple in Oregon. And okay, here are some full stack engineers that I have a number of connections with. These might be people, good people to go ahead and reach out and be like, hey, what is it like being a developer at Apple? And then, of course, you can go ahead and connect with people. You can chat with people. Oftentimes, of course, you'll want to look at their profiles a little bit first. And by doing that, you can really leverage LinkedIn to look for people to chat with, both people just based on roles, companies. You can look for, maybe if you went to a university, you can say, who in my area went to my university and works as a front-end developer. LinkedIn, again, makes it really easy to do all that, and then sort that by people that you may know or may know people that you may know. Basically, LinkedIn is really helpful for finding the most likely people to go ahead and talk to. From there, of course, you can go ahead and direct message people. Here we've got some kind of sample templates to work off if they're helpful to you. Ask for things like, hey, I noticed that you work at X company. I noticed that you work in Y company. Currently, I'm doing this. What makes a developer, how could I prepare myself for a job at X company? What is working for Y company like? How do you enjoy, what does your day-to-day life look like working for company Z? All those sorts of things. The best way really is to go ahead and ask questions. Use that question mark on your keyboard, ask questions, or go ahead and ask them again, can I buy you a cup of coffee? Can we talk about this a little further? And that's where we get into informational interviews. So let's talk, we've kind of built up to it. Let's talk a little bit, and we've talked about how to find people for informational interviews. If you don't necessarily already know a lot of software developers that you already have in mind. Again, LinkedIn, meetups, hackathons are going to be your best bets for finding those sorts of people. Once you do, here is a little bit about what to do for an informational interview. So remember that you're getting information only. Don't bring your resume. Don't ask for a job. Let the other person talk 80% of the time. Remember that this is an informational interview. You can always make it about yourself later. You can continue that conversation, but for now, sit down, shut up, ask questions, and pick their brain. Learn from them. Don't worry about kind of job listings or trying to get them your resume or anything like that right off the bat like that. Informational interviews are really great because you can get lots of information, you can exchange ideas, you can find out a lot. That's the information in informational interviews. Like I mentioned earlier, it's really great to be able to talk to people, different types of people at different types of companies, different types of positions, and find out a little more. If over the last 3 days, you're still not sure, front end, back end, maybe I told you this a little earlier about a job that sounds great, but you'd like to learn more. Informational interviews are a great way to basically answer all of the questions that you have. And again, don't just ask one person for an informational interview, ask more than one person for an informational interview, not only for the networking benefits, but also because you'll hear different perspectives. It's always good to hear different perspectives, and then you will have a better idea of what you're going for. Of course, you can also build your communication skills. It's great practice. And you can discover what's called the hidden job market, jobs that don't necessarily get widely publicized because they get snapped up by someone who knows someone. Your job here is to become the somebody that may know somebody. Maybe you don't, maybe someone doesn't have something for you right now, but there's a good chance that if someone knows that you're a hungry young grad from a boot camp and you've been working on stuff and you're interested and they know that, someone might reach out to you later and be like, hey, or maybe, hey, I even got your information from somebody else. Can we talk? That sort of thing. Informational interviews can be freaky because you are talking to people that you don't necessarily know. For a lot of, especially a lot of programmers, that is not people's favorite thing. So take actionable steps to get out of your comfort zone. Breathe, stay mindful and present. If you're at a networking event, focus on the people you would most like to meet. Have some informal conversation openers or icebreakers in mind. Don't lose sight of your goal and be easy on yourself. Networking's hard. Anyone who's a great networker or knows a lot of people got there by doing all this and by being not great a networker. So be easy on yourself. It's a process. You got to start somewhere, but I promise it will snowball. You'll eventually become much better at it. So again, we've talked about finding contacts based on either people you know or people you can find on LinkedIn. Again, contact them, email, phone, LinkedIn, whatever. Don't ask for a job or more than 30 minutes of their time. Be authentic, be yourself. The purpose is to gain more information and more insight. Bring a notebook to write in, do research, and come prepared with questions. Be genuinely curious. Don't just use it as a pretext to know people, though you can definitely use informational interviews as a pretext to know people. Use them as an opportunity to find things out. And again, like I mentioned earlier, you can absolutely 100% also ask multiple people the same questions. You do not have to find brand new questions to ask people every time. You can ask them the same questions you asked the last person. You'll hopefully get just a little more nuance, and then you don't have to worry about trying to find new questions. After you're done with that, don't forget to ask them to thank them for their time later. We'll talk about that in a second. And also, a great thing to do when you thank people and follow up is to ask them if there's anyone, especially if there maybe was a question that they didn't know a lot about, or something that maybe started to get outside their wheelhouse or something. Another great way to find people to do informational interviews and things with is to ask if they can introduce you to someone to someone else, or if there's anyone else that can answer those questions or anything like that. That's a great way to find people to add to your list of people to chat with and do informational interviews. Again, within 48 hours max, make sure you send a thank you email and then touch base in a couple of weeks. Let them know how you're doing, how you use their advice, and just build up those relationships. So does anybody have any more questions about networking and informational interviews? All right, then. Networking gets a bad rap. There's so many things you can do for networking and everything. If I were in your shoes, I would focus on meetups, hackathons, and meeting people on LinkedIn to do informational interviews with. There's obviously, you don't have to limit yourself to that. There are a million ways to network, but rather than fret about whether you're doing it the right way or not, I know that especially as someone just entering the industry, anytime you are faced with decisions, anytime you have to kind of navigate things, and maybe you're a little, you're a little afraid or a little anxious, you're doing things you're figuring out for the first time. The best advice is probably just to go to schedule yourself informational interviews, go to any meetups and hackathons that are even somewhat relevant that you can find. And from there, you should be able to get a good start. All righty. So it is 5 o'clock, so it is about time for us to go ahead and just take a little 10-minute break again. When we get back from our break, what we will do is we will talk about some of the we'll talk about the last few things that are the requirements for Tech Career 101. We'll talk about kind of what to do next after Tech Career 101, again, both through Code Guild and on your own. And we will talk a bit about where to look for jobs and a little bit about kind of the job hunting process itself. And then I will leave you with a couple of videos of that the Code Guild has already put together that are ones about how to read a tech job listing and kind of how to look at a tech job listing and read between the lines and find out exactly, just based on words and clues, find out exactly what they're looking for and whether it's a good job listing for you. And the second video is just going to be one about the application and interview process by one of our grads who went through that about a year or two ago. So let's take a 10-minute break. Let's come back at 5:12 Pacific time, and then we'll go ahead and talk about those last couple of things. See you in 10. Alrighty, let's go ahead and first, before we move on, does anybody have any questions about anything we've talked about so far, about any different job positions or anything about networking or meetups or anything like that?
I might have missed this specific thing, so sorry if I'm making you repeat yourself. But
Oh, no, go ahead.
If you don't really have a lot, like I'm in a kind of a smaller town in Tennessee, and there's not like a real big tech scene here. Even Nashville's close, but even there's not like a big. Most of the techies in Nashville work remotely for other companies. But so I know you talked about Meetup and LinkedIn. Is there anything specific like that's more like sort of global, or I'm not necessarily global, but just like a wider spread, non location specific?
Yeah, in particular, you can. I know that since the I haven't personally done a lot of it because A, I haven't needed to hunt for a job, and B, I hate like Discord groups and everything. But I know since the pandemic, there are a lot of like Slack and Discord groups that are just like informal communities of people talking about programming or talking about jobs. Or anything like that, because again, when everything shut down in 2020 and all the in-person networks and in-person hackathons and everything ground to a halt, there was people still wanted to network, people still wanted to talk, people were still entering the field, so there was definitely still a lot a lot of opportunities for that popped up as people were trying to come up with a substitute. Those are largely still there. I bet Nashville is a big enough city, and that I bet, again, it depends. It totally, like I mentioned, like with a lot of this stuff, it's totally individual. It totally depends on what you have access and interest to and interest with. But you can probably find some Nashville stuff, and maybe it's not the sort of thing where like you want to, be headed into Nashville every week. Again, I don't know how far away it is or anything from you. Maybe it's not something you want to do every week or something, but maybe it's something where maybe if there's a hackathon that's going on for a weekend, you might want to make a little trip out of it or something like that.
Yeah, I was actually just Googling that, and they had a hackathon on the 30th of March. I'm like 2 weeks too late. I was like, it wasn't.
Yeah, there'll be other stuff. And there also is, when you start getting into especially open source things, you can kind of contribute to open source. There are kind of online hackathons and online open source communities and things like that. I will say personally from experience, especially if you are kind of less sure of yourself or something, it is much easier to do that kind of stuff in person.
That's fair. Yeah. Thank you.
Just kind of being in a room, makes it a lot easier to do a lot of that kind of hackathon stuff and everything. So again, I know I keep saying this, but it does totally depend on what you have access to, and what your interests are. But there is stuff online. Unfortunately, I haven't dealt that much into it because it just isn't something I've had to or wanted to really deal with. I have started going to some meetups and everything now that those have kind of started up in person around town again and everything. But yeah, no, I would definitely encourage you to be able to look at it, especially for like I was saying, especially for hackathons. Because that's probably, if there's one thing, basically, if there's one reason you should drive into Nashville, it'd be for hackathons.
Cool, thank you.
Any other questions? Alrighty, then let's go ahead and talk about the last couple of, there we go. Let's go ahead and talk about the last couple of tech career 101 stuff. So one of which is we talked about how when you talk to someone, either if you do like you don't have to literally send a thank you email anytime you mutter a word to somebody. But of course, if somebody's done something for you, if you've informational interviewed, if you've done something that involving an actual job application, any of that, then you will want to send them a thank you email, again, within 48 hours. So one of the things, one of the requirements for Tech Career 101 is to have just kind of a boilerplate or example thank you letter thank you email letter, so that you don't have to even think about it or worry about it. It's not even something that you have to stress out about. It's just literally when you talk to someone, when someone gives you their time, you can just immediately copy and paste, modify it as necessary, and send it out in just a couple of minutes without needing to worry about that. That's the whole point, is just not needing to have to worry about this stuff to the extent that you can make it so you don't have to worry about it. So you should have a template of a thank you for talking with me today email, so that when you do talk with someone, again, it only takes a second for you to send them an email thanking them for their time. Again, you don't have to follow this example and this kind of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 to the letter. But if you're at a loss for what to put, this is a good kind of template. Thank them for their time, recap just in a sentence or less what you talked about, link it back to your skills or what was discussed. Anything else, this of course totally depends on who you're replying to. And if applicable, tell them you're looking forward to speaking with them again. So this is an example that I wrote in literally about 2 minutes. But hello, name of person. Thank you for talking with me today. It was so useful to have the chance to pick your brain and learn more about what the day-to-day experience was like at name of company. As per your suggestions, I will continue to work on my Django REST framework skills. Again, thank you, and I look forward to talking with you in the future. Again, it's a short paragraph. It does not have to be, it should not be a long novel or anything. Just link it back, make it obvious that you talk to them and you're going off of that, and then you can just go ahead and send that off. Any questions? All righty. As you are applying to jobs, interviewing with people, making connections and networking, it's very, very, very easy to lose track and to forget about things, forget what you've been, who that one person was, especially if it isn't something like LinkedIn, where it just gives you the chat history and where they work right in the chat window, so you can kind of see your history and everything. So you will want some sort of leads spreadsheet or tracker. This is another thing where I don't want to tell you how you have to keep track of your job leads. I want you to do it in whatever way makes sense to you, but you should have some sort of something, whether it's a spreadsheet. I've had a couple of people in Tech Career 101 ask me if it was okay to have like a Trello or a Kanban board set up or something, and it absolutely 100% is. This is something for you to use, so you should build it in whatever way works best for you. It doesn't have to be a spreadsheet, but you should have some way of keeping track of the people that you've been talking to, companies, what you talked about for, etc. So here in the resources in day 3, we've got just a little thing that talks about how to use a spreadsheet. And it does have a example here. You can make a copy of this and use this as yours if you want, or you can make your own, or again, you can use like a Trello or a Kanban board or something. This particular one, again, has the kind of the instructions on the best way to do it, best way to keep track of it. But you will want to have some way of keeping track of your leads that you've been talking to. The other big Tech Career 101 requirement here is an example cover letter. So a cover letter is something that you are 100% going to be customizing for every job, and you definitely should customize it for every job, but it's still, just like the thank you note, it takes a lot of the time and just mental effort away from it if you do already have a starting point, a template, a generic version that you can go ahead and work off of. A cover letter is an underrated part of a job application. No one likes it, but whereas a resume is literally just the facts, you want your resume to be as short and to the point as possible. Your LinkedIn, you can put a lot more in. There isn't really as much of a restriction about trying to keep it as minimal and to the point. You can expand upon things in LinkedIn, but you can put a lot on, on a LinkedIn profile. And in that case, you're kind of hoping that the hiring manager is reading the thing that you're hoping that they read. What a cover letter can really do is, a cover letter is where you get to point out anything that might not come across in your LinkedIn or your your resume. Anything, if a resume is kind of just the stats, just the facts, this is where you can apply the human touch and give any additional information or background or anything that doesn't come across just off of your resume or your LinkedIn itself. This is where you have a chance to talk about yourself and talk a little bit about why, what you're interested in and what you want out of that job, and to kind of put a little bit more of a personality on than just a resume. So it is a really good chance to just add a little more. Oftentimes, even if companies don't accept a cover letter, oftentimes companies that don't accept cover letters or resumes or things like that will give you a list of basically essay questions that they want you to answer. Basically, they're telling you what they want in a cover letter. So whether it is a predetermined kind of list of instructions that you've been given, or whether it is literally just you doing a generic cover letter, you'll definitely want to, most jobs are going to have you write a little something, so that without going to kind of the time and expense and everything of setting up an interview, they can still start to get a sense for you as a candidate and a person. So let's look at what goes into a cover letter. You, of course, want the date, and you want to give some sort of salutation, address it to somebody. Of course, you want to say thank you. You want to, have your name, etc. But it's of course the meat of it, the content of it, where you're going to be able to express yourself. And here is the basic format that you'll want to do. In the first paragraph, you should tell them why you like that company and you like that position. Basically, paragraph 1 is why you like them, and paragraph 2 is why they will like you. So that's kind of the split. When in doubt, paragraph 1 is why you like them, and paragraph 2 is why you think they will like you. So for paragraph 1, tell them why you like the position, what appeals to it. When possible, use terms, and feel free to lift terms, phrases, and everything out of job descriptions. But say how you learned about the job description, why you are interested in it, and anything else. This is where you get to express your interest and say that, this isn't just something that you're applying to because you need a job, but you're applying to this because you are genuinely interested in X company, Y position, or whatever. This is going to, of course, depend a little bit on whatever it is about the company and about the position that does draw you to it. So, for example, as an ambitious professional with verbal/written communication proficiency and extensive senior project manager experience, I was thrilled to learn about the contract project manager opening. I was compelled to contact you with my interest, as it would be a career highlight to be considered for such an opportunity with confidential company during this time of crisis and need. I believe that my professional background, ability to negotiate contracts, and industrialist drive make me an ideal candidate to fill this position. Frankly, I would be much more specific there. That is a fairly generic letter. Don't worry too much about being super specific for your example cover letter, because, of course, the specifics will vary depending on who you're applying to. But again, for now, you just want a template. You want to kind of get in the habit of it. You want to practice it and have something that's half applicable, so that you already have half the work done when you do go to submit a cover letter. To be more tech specific, you can say something about, I was drawn to this position because I love the work that X does in Y industry. I love the chance to work with Z framework or W language, something like that. Look through the company's website, look through the company's job listing, and try to provide some concrete things in your cover letter that you do enjoy. Basically, why did you pick that position to apply to? If you're not genuinely excited about it, well, then fake it. Come up with some things about it. Come up with some reasons why that job wouldn't be completely awful to take. Come up with some things, tell them why you like that company and why your position, that position. You can use that to express your enthusiasm and make sure that they know that you are someone who isn't just applying because they need it, but you're enthusiastic and you are ready for that specific job role. Paragraph 2 is what you can bring to the team. This is your chance to basically, in a paragraph or two, it's fine if you want 2 paragraphs about what you can bring to the team. You can have that bonus paragraph 2 there is optional. You may need it, you may not want it. It's totally up to you. You just have the flexibility. That's where you can kind of go up to 2 paragraphs if you want. But what can you bring to the team? And again, as specific as possible, the better. You'll want to go ahead and specify what you can bring to the team and why your experience is going to be great for that. If you are applying to a job with Esri doing front-end development with mapping, then you might spend that paragraph talking about your that you have that, here's what I've done with online mapping, here's why I'm interested in it, and also I know these other skills that would be a good match. So again, this is where what you can bring to the team, why they should be excited about you. Paragraph 1 is why you're excited about the position. Paragraph 2 is why the position should be excited about you. And then finally, the last paragraph is usually a short one. It's just a call to action. It's where you say things like, you can find my resume here. I look forward to contacting with you. Thank you for considering me, et cetera, et cetera. Again, it's usually a short paragraph, but it's just a call to action, a conclusion at the end there. And that is really all that you need for a cover letter. Cover letters look super abstract, they can be, but if you follow kind of that basic thing where you spend a paragraph talking about why you like the company and the position, a paragraph or 2 talking about why the company or the position would like you, and then a call to action at the end, then you will be way ahead of at least 80% of the cover letters that are out there. Any questions about cover letters? All right. So we've only got one more requirement for Tech Career 101 that I want to talk about. But first, let's talk a little bit about what to do once you have all of this stuff. Once you have all of these, these completion requirements done, then you'll go ahead and turn them in by emailing them to careerservices@pdxcodegill.com. Either you can send it as a link, you can send it as an attachment, depending on what it is. If it's a document, you can attach it or you can link to it. If it's like a website or your portfolio or your deployed capstone, obviously it'll be a link. Me and a couple other people monitor that career services, and we'll go ahead and check those off the list as you complete them. You can send them in, again, links or attachments. You can send them in one at a time as you do them. You can wait until you have a bunch. I've gotten emails that have one at a time. I've gotten emails that literally have the entire thing all in one email, turning everything in. I really don't care how you get it in. just email that all to Career Services, and we'll go ahead and check off that you have completed those things. And if I have any notes or suggestions, I'll go ahead and send you a reply just with any notes or, again, notes or suggestions that I have. For some of these things, like the cover letter or the thanks for talking with me email template, some of those things that do kind of require doing kind of a generic version of things. If you find it hard to do it as kind of a generic version of things, my suggestion would be to go find a job listing on the internet, just any tech or even non-tech job listing, and then basically write one for that job listing. If you're having trouble kind of doing a generic one, then just come up with this with a theoretical job listing or circumstance that you can go ahead and write one for. The most important part is just that you get this stuff on paper or in a file, I guess. That you are putting it together. Don't let perfect be the enemy of good. You want to get the stuff done and get it down. After you got it down, you can always edit things, refine things as you go. But you do want to go ahead and get this all done so that you can start applying to jobs. You may not need the perfect resume. Of course, if your job search goes well, there's a good chance that you may just be able to do just fine just off your initial draft. And of course, if you have any better ideas for your resume, or you get something, or someone suggests something, you can always easily go back and add it later. The last two things are these plans of action. And these are probably the things that I get the most questions about for the Tech Career 101 class here, just because people are like, oh, does it have to be this? Does it have to be that? I promise coming up with the plans of action for your portfolio and for your job search is actually probably the shortest and easiest thing on this entire list. Basically, once you've got all of these requirements completed, what are your next steps? What are you going to do? This is basically you showing me your to-do list of what you're going to do after this. Again, both for expanding your portfolio and for doing the actual job search. As I mentioned before, I would normally recommend that at least to start, you spend half of your time doing job search, applying to jobs, looking for jobs, networking, and half of your time continuing to code, continuing to work on portfolio projects and everything. So that's what these last two things are, is plans of actions. These should, again, just list the next step that you're gonna take after you complete the Tech Career 101 requirements. Think of this as you're starting to do for your job search. Just bullet points in an email is perfectly fine. I just want to see from you a little bit of a to-do list about what you're going to do after you're done with Tech Career 101. I've got some examples here for a job search plan of action or a portfolio plan of action. You should, of course, be able to go ahead and apply these on your own and come up with what you're going to do. But things might be something like deploy a project, start a new portfolio project, learn Django REST framework, learn React, build mockups to demonstrate CSS skills, deploy Postgres to show off, to build and show off database skills, complete online SQL course, things like that. Basically, what are you going to learn? What are you going to program next after you're done with Tech Career 101? And same thing for job search examples. Things like reach out to 10 people for informational interviews, attend hackathons, attend a React meetup, attend a Python meetup, a Django meetup, make a list of companies to target, apply to those jobs. This, depending on who it is, you might, if you already know a group, for instance, if you're a veteran, one of your job search things may be connect with a local veterans group. that is definitely one place that you can find meetups and resources and everything is there are veterans and tech groups. So those are the different things for your plans of action. Again, bullet points are totally fine. This does not have to be an essay. I'd much rather you spend that time working on your portfolio and working on your job search rather than writing me essays about it or anything. This should just be some bullet points. It should just be basically your to-do list about what are you going to do when you're done here. Any questions about the plans of action? Alrighty then. In that case, we're going to go a little bit backwards just to make sure that we finish in time. I'm going to kind of almost wrap up Tech 101, and then we'll talk a bit about applying for jobs and a bit about where to look for jobs. Again, turn all that stuff in as you're working on it, and we'll go ahead and check it off. When you are done with all those completion requirements, then two things happen. Number one, you are absolutely 100% ready to apply for jobs. You've got everything you're going to need. Resume, cover letter, you've got all your profiles to network with, you've got code that you can show off to other people, you've got everything you need to keep track of your job search. When you finish up all these Tech 101 requirements, you will be much better prepared than most entry-level programmers for your job search, and you will be a much better candidate. Aside from just the not to sound too cheesy, but aside from the satisfaction of having everything done well, blah blah blah, and everything, once you're done with these Tech Career 101 requirements, then you are eligible for some extra services from the Code Guild. We have a mentor who's a senior software engineer who does interview prep and mock interviews for us. So you can talk to him and you can set up an appointment if you want to do like a mock technical interview, if you want to do a mock just like behavioral interview, if you want to talk about interview prep, if you just want to kind of go over and talk about job search steps and things to go for. Again, you can meet once you've got all the Tech Career 101 stuff out of the way, then you're ready to go ahead and meet one-on-one and talk about those more advanced things and talk about your situation, your portfolio, and everything in particular. Again, also to do interview prep to practice for your next steps. Another thing that is a benefit of having all of this finished up is that we actually have in the last couple of months, it's usually not, I can't make any promises about how often they come up or anything like that, but it has been pretty often actually in the last few months that we've gotten either Code Guild advisors or Code Guild alumni or just organizations in the community or something reaching out to us and asking us if we have any grads that we can recommend for internships or entry-level positions or contracts or anything like that. When we do, the people that we share those with, the people that we share those with so that they can and then recommend are going to be people who have done Tech Career 101, who have all this stuff out and who are 100% ready to apply for things. We've already matched a number of people up with internship opportunities or contract work and things. So again, those opportunities are going to go to people who have all of this stuff done, who are ready to go ahead and send things on. Because of course, if there is if people are looking for an opportunity, what are you going to want to send? A resume and a cover letter. So we want to know that you already have a basic resume and a cover letter ready to go, ready to send out, that you are ready to go ahead and apply to those jobs. So there's a few other things that come up every now and then, but those are, again, going to be the two big things that are advantages of finishing Tech Career 101. Well, three things if you count the fact that A, you're ready to apply for jobs. You've got absolutely everything you need. But B, you're eligible for the one-on-one support and the interview prep. And two is that you are, two, three, whichever, is that you are eligible. We know that you have all your stuff done and you're ready for you are 100% job ready. So you are the ones that we reach out to when we have someone ask us if we have anyone that we can recommend. If you have any questions before that about anything here in Tech Career 101, or you have questions, maybe you have questions as you're going to deploy things, or you're not quite sure how to put something on your resume or something, two ways that you can get those questions answered. Number one is you can always email careerservices@pdxcodeguild.com with a question and we'll get back to you. Number two is that there's study hall on Tuesdays and Thursdays from 2 to 4 Pacific time, and on Saturdays from 9 to noon in the morning Pacific time. Alex is great. He's super knowledgeable, both about coding and about just the industry and jobs in general. So that's another resource if you do have any questions about anything. So we are almost done. The last couple of things we're going to do is we are going to talk a little bit about where to look, where to find jobs, where to get ideas for companies. And we will go ahead and talk a little bit about what those last two videos that you can watch on your own are: the how to read a tech job listing and the application and interview process video. But before we go ahead and do those and wrap up today, does anybody have any questions?
I think you covered everything that I wanted you to cover, honestly.
All right, then let's talk a little bit about how to find jobs, and then we'll go ahead and call it a day. So there are a couple good ways to find jobs. I'm going to divide it into job boards and websites that you might use to find companies, jobs, etc. One is, of course, just what are the best websites to look for tech jobs? And there are a couple of them. LinkedIn is one. LinkedIn is great. It has a number of benefits because you basically, both you and the companies have access to all the information that's already on LinkedIn. That makes it very easy to apply for things, for people to check you out, etc. Indeed is another really good one. Indeed is really good for tech jobs in terms of just kind of looking at everything. Those are probably the top two. If I had to say you were limited to just two places to search for jobs, I'd probably say those two. I don't, oh no, is it not in the, oh no, it might not be in this repository. You might have to go back and look in your own class for this. But in the post-course 6 folder in your class repo, there should be something, I think it's under either post bootcamp or jobs, that has some that has some job boards. It's in jobs.md that has some job boards listed. So again, I really like Indeed and LinkedIn. Glassdoor is also a really nice one. There are other ones that are that can be nice, things like the Stack Overflow job board, the CodePen job board. You can find things on Reddit sometimes. Those are what I would suggest for just like generic, everybody online job boards for finding stuff. Don't overlook, I would say though, don't overlook local things. Obviously, the examples I'm going to show off are going to be based on Portland because that's where I am and that's where I'm familiar here at because it's PDX Code Guild. But you can usually find jobs that are job boards that are special or local to different local areas. For example, here in Portland, we have the PDX WIT, which is Portland Women in Tech, that has a really good job board to go ahead and look at. You can see here there are a bunch of jobs here. So this is a really good job board. Also here in Portland, we have this Portland Tech Jobs website that is put on by someone at the Oregon, just the work source, the Oregon Employment Office or the State Employment Office. And you can see here in the job search link that the local state employment department often has job boards. You can find different job boards related to certain areas. For instance, Silicon Florist is another just kind of Portland startup related website. We talked about the Technology Association of Oregon has their own tech job board here. Even things like Reddit or career fairs at Portland State. We talked about Portland Women in Tech already. So obviously those are going to be different depending on the different areas. But again, things like the local groups for veterans in tech or women in tech or other special interest groups are going to have job boards for your area. Different industry groups for your area, like in this case, Silicon Florist or the Technology Association of Oregon. You can find a lot through the state employment offices often. This particular website, for those of you who might be in Portland, this has not been updated since the pandemic, basically, since the pandemic started. But this has a huge list of companies. Looks like there is literally almost 700 companies that are hiring for tech jobs in Portland. Again, this is a horribly, literally like 3 years out of date list. So this isn't something that you can rely on for actual job listings. For example, let's just go with the first one on the list here, 10up. If I actually look at their positions, oh no, they do actually have a bunch of positions. I'm not gonna waste your time going through these all piece by piece, but basically just because you see something here on this list is not a guarantee that they're actually hiring, but it is a really good, if you're thinking about companies that you might want to keep an eye out for, or companies that you might want to target for informational interviews or for actual job applications. This website can be a really great way to see what's around in Portland. Again, if you're not in Portland, I can't tell you what your exact version of this would be. There may or may not be something similar or as good. Again, you'll have to do a little bit of Googling. Again, look at local groups for the tech scene in your city or region. Look at the state employment office, see what you can find. The really nice thing about this one is that it divides things into into things like language. So we can see not only what kind of companies hire for different languages and different frameworks, but we can also see kind of what the relation is. So we can see, for example, JavaScript is the #1 thing that companies are using and hiring for, which kind of makes sense because every front-end job is going to use JavaScript. But we can see that on the back end, Java is very popular. C#.NET is very popular, and Python is very popular. Those three are all very popular backend languages. Something like Ruby on Rails or PHP is not going to be as popular. You can see there's only about half as many companies hiring for those as there is for Python or C# or Java. Similarly, we can see how there are a ton of React jobs, not quite as many Vue jobs, but definitely a lot of Vue jobs. And same thing, you can look for, if you're interested in some of the more back-end things, you can see jobs involving Docker or on AWS or Azure. If you're interested more in back-end DevOps hosting, things like that. You can also, of course, divide it into, for example, web developer, front-end, full stack, back-end, etc. Data positions, whether it's database administrator, data science, cloud and data center type stuff. This allows you, again, it's not necessarily going to be great if you want to find the exact jobs that are hiring right now, because the site is literally so far 3 years out of date. But something like this can be a really great idea, just a way to just get a sense of what is going on in the tech industry in general. One thing not to be scared off of is the fact that entry level and junior developer is pretty sparse. There's not a lot here. You don't have to worry about that. One of the things that makes tech job listings, job applications, et cetera, really annoying is the fact that for whatever reason, we've gotten ourselves into a situation where what's in the job listings is heavily inflated. So for example, you'll see job listings that require an insane amount of stuff, but they're not going to get somebody who knows all that. Oftentimes, the HR posts the job listing based on a conversation they had with someone on the development team, someone who actually needs it. Lots of opportunities for games of telephone, lots of opportunities for wishes to become prerequisites. Basically, if you look at a job listing, you look at the must-haves, and you're like, okay, I fit 70% of that, then you're good to go. You can go ahead and apply to things. In terms of years of experience, if you see something that says 1 to 3 years of experience, believe it or not, that's a job that you should be applying for. It's definitely, things are just, it's just inflated. It's just the way it goes. And again, don't be too scared of it when you actually get into it and you actually look at the job listings and you see what they require and everything. Because often, if you look at what they are looking to pay, either because you went on something like Glassdoor, or because hopefully they have some sort of pay range in the job listing itself, oftentimes what they're asking for, if they actually got somebody that ticked all of those boxes and knew everything that they asked for, almost always it would be someone with way more experience, and they would have to pay way more than what they actually want to pay people. There's been a lot in the news lately about tech layoffs and everything. This doesn't. I'm not gonna say it isn't scary to read the headlines and think about all of that, but you do have a couple of advantages because you are someone who has already gone through all the education, you know everything you need to know, and you're looking for entry-level jobs. A lot of the people that are getting laid off are people that are mid or upper level developers. There was a lot of, during the pandemic and the whole thing about the Great Resignation and all that, there was a lot that went on with people getting hired. There was a lot of tech moving around. The big companies especially are always looking for top level talent. And frankly, what happened during the pandemic was a lot of talent stockpiling, a lot of things where big companies, especially the big kind of FANG, Facebook, Amazon, Google level companies were like, we don't necessarily have something for this person to do, but how often is this level of tech talent going to come up? There's a tech talent shortage. We'll hire them first, ask questions later. Now, 2-3 years later, all these companies are like, man, we are just letting so much money go out the door to just have these people on staff. And in a lot of cases, there's a lot of so many stories on the internet of people, especially at companies like Facebook, getting hired to basically do nothing. Just and make, mid 6 figures just to sit on their butts and do nothing, because Facebook wanted to have them on staff if needed, and also to make sure that no one else got that good talent. There was a bit of a gold rush, and a lot of those people have been the ones affected by the layoff. You're not those people. Right now, tech in general is trying to keep their budgets down, but they still need stuff done. They still need stuff built. If you're going to have a company, you need developers. So there actually has been an increased interest in hiring more entry-level, inexperienced developers because they're cheaper. Because in a lot of cases, maybe you don't know everything a mid-level developer knows, but a good 90-95% of everything a mid-level developer knows, but they can literally hire you for half as much. So there's a lot more that anecdotally seems to be coming up at the lower end of the market. This is very good for you because these are the types of jobs that you are applying for. Another thing is that I've noticed that all the bad headlines have been scaring off a lot of people from getting involved in tech to begin with. Since you've already done it and since you've committed, there are less budding, aspiring, junior, entry-level developers entering the workforce because people aren't going to code schools. They aren't learning these skills. They're getting scared off by the headlines. And that means that you've got less people to compete with. So it is actually, I know it's kind of nerve-wracking to read the headlines, but it is actually, if it's any consolation, it is a surprisingly good time to be hunting for an entry-level developer position. Your competition as an entry-level developer is largely getting scared off from entering the industry at all. At the same time, tech companies are looking to reduce their budgets, reduce their hiring budgets, and hire cheaper programmers, which in a lot of cases means you as an entry-level developer. That is about where I am going to leave you. We've talked about kind of how to find companies, how to find jobs. The next step, other than obviously finishing up all your Tech Career 101, is, as I have linked here, just on the Tech Career 101 repo, there are 2 videos here. They're both about 45-50 minutes long. One is how to read a tech job listing. Basically, I will, in that video, I bring up a number of just example job listings off the internet and show you how to read them and find out, even if they're not clear about how much experience they want or what level they are. If you know kind of the secret language of tech job listings, you can find out exactly what they're looking for very quickly. So I've got a video there kind of demystifying and figuring out the detail of that. And then another one here is, again, Austin Coate. We looked at his resume and LinkedIn as examples. He was my TA for a while, and he got a job finished being a TA, got a job a year or two ago. He came back and did this interview, this talk with us about what the application process looks like in a pandemic, especially for applying to remote jobs, kind of what that looks like and how everything goes. So that's another great resource that's going to keep talking about some of the job tech application stuff that we didn't quite have time for going through today. So yeah, that is about where I will leave you. Again, those here are the requirements. Everything here that we've been talking about, examples of everything is in the repo if you forget, or you just need to go back and look at it. These are the completion requirements for Tech Career 101. When you're done with stuff, just get it emailed to careerservices@pdxcogill.com, one at a time, in batches, all of it at once. Links, attachments, doesn't matter, just whatever way works, get it emailed, and we will check it off. And then you can do interview prep and get access to any job leads that we come across, that we share. In the meantime, work on those completion requirements. Go ahead and watch those two videos. I'll be checking the Career Services email and looking for stuff. If you have any questions in the meantime, you can always, again, email careerservices@pdxcogill.com, or you can go to Study Hall and you can talk to Alex, ask him any questions, or if you need help with anything technical, any development or deployment questions as well. And so with that, does anybody have any questions?
I guess I meant to ask this earlier, but ask it now since we're at the end of the thing. When we talked about data engineering versus data analysis, you said an analysis is the stuff that generally requires like more of a more math knowledge, right?
Yeah, as a general rule, data analysis is, or being a data scientist is going to require more math. It doesn't have to, but you can definitely, I've definitely seen people with no math or statistics background get data analyst jobs and everything. But if you, for instance, wanted to have the most room to progress to be a senior data analyst, or the jobs that you will be eligible for and everything will be a lot higher with a math or science background. Data engineering is basically in charge of getting the data cleaned, organized, stored, and ready for the data analysts. That doesn't require any math or statistics knowledge at all.
What with the data engineering, obviously Python's a big one with that, but what else would be good to sort of just sort of focus on, I guess, improving my skills?
That's going to be a lot of cloud computing, working with databases. Those are two big things to practice for. It depends a little bit. Like, for instance, Google has its own kind of head to tail stack for it. You can even find, like, if you look for like Google, I think it's called Google Data Cloud or something, that's got kind of their versions of things, which is kind of based off, it's kind of a forked based off version of Apache. Apache has like Apache Spark, and I think Hadoop might be an Apache thing too. But that's another set of things that you can look for.
Okay, when you say working with databases, can you kind of clarify on that? Sorry.
Yeah. So basically everything to do with databases, setting them up, linking them to things, building them out, doing SQL queries, being able to maybe spin up a Postgres thing to work with, all the kind of database relationships, being able to think about how data is represented, or look at maybe a bunch of CSVs that are related to each other but are in separate CSVs, and then think about how to load that data into a database and how to set up like the many-to-manys, many to ones, one-to-ones, in order to get that data represented, and how to set up all the database fields, things like that.
Okay, gotcha. Thank you.
And again, you totally don't have to know everything for that to go ahead and be a data engineer.
Yeah, but all I know right now is Python. So yeah, maybe broaden that out a little
Right.
bit.
Yeah. So that's what I would say is look up Apache and Apache Spark, that stuff. Look up the Google data. I think it's called Google Data Cloud or Google Data Engine or something like that. Kind of look at kind of what software they're using there. But especially at the base level, just kind of more work with data and databases.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Any other questions?